Now let's look at how to add elements to lists. This is something that we can do destructively or non-destructively. And we're going to look at both ways. First, let's look at destructive adding of elements. Now there's a couple of different methods you can use to add elements into a list. One is the append method. This takes a single element, which can be an integer or a string or anything else, and appends it to the end of the list. So here, if we say a.append of 7, that's going to add 7 to the end of the list we specified here. That makes a lot of sense. If we want to add multiple elements, there's a couple of ways that we can do that instead. One is actually using the plus equals operation that we've used before. If we say a plus equals and then a list of all the elements we want to add to the list, that will put those elements at the end of a. It'll just add those two different lists together and make one out of them. So that is one way to put multiple elements into the list. Another is to use a different built-in method, extend. This will take a list with the elements that you want to add to your original list and extend the original list with those new elements. This works in exactly the same way as plus equals, but it's using a built-in method instead of the plus equals operator. These three methods will all add elements to the end of the list, but we might sometimes want to add elements into a specific position in the list instead. When we want to do that, we can use the insert method. Now, insert specifies an index and a value, and we'll then insert the value into that specific index. If we say a.insert 2 and 42, we'll go to the second index, which is right here at 5, and put 42 into that position, moving everything else back further into the list. So our resulting list here says 2, 3, 42, and then the rest of the list. If we want, we could change this around to say, for example, we want to insert 42 into the beginning of the list. Then as you can see, everything else will get moved backwards. Or we could potentially tell it to go into the back of the list, which is 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. So we could put it in the fourth position. That actually will put it right before 11. So if we wanted to go all the way in the back, we would need to use index 5 instead. That gives us some more control over where the element will go. Now, these methods for adding elements to a list are all destructive. They are modifying the list that you're originally given in place. And sometimes we want to modify lists and add elements to a list in a non-destructive manner. We want to create a new list instead of using the one we had before. There are two ways to do that. First, we can use the plus operation. We can say a list plus other elements and put it into a new variable entirely. That will give us a new list which is not alias to the original one. You might be surprised to see this because we just before showed that we can add elements to the back of a list using plus equals, and there we were destructively modifying it. And that's true. What's happening with plus equals is that you're modifying that other list in place. So if here I say a plus equals, and then I put, let's say 0 and 42, and then afterwards I say b equals a plus these last two elements, when we run this, you can see now both of these have the original values of a, but now we've also added two more elements to b, which are not in a. So plus equals is going to modify a destructively, but the plus without plus separate from plus equals will modify it non-destructively. We can also insert an item at a given index with list slices. Right here, basically you figure out the index where you want to insert the element, and you take the rest of the list and separate it around that index. So when we say a with the slice up to 2, that's going to give us all of the elements up to but not including whatever is at index 2. And then a from 2 onwards will include all of the elements from index 2 onwards. So we can put 5 in between them. When we run this code, you can see here b is again not alias to a. It's inserted 5 to the end. That's kind of boring because we could have just appended 5 in the first place. So we could instead change 2 to 1 to tell the code to put 5 in between 2 and 3 by putting it in the place where 3 currently is. When we run this code, 5 now goes between 2 and 3. So again, to show you how these are different, with plus equals, we are, in the destructive method, we are modifying something in a way that we have an aliased version of the list. So if we say b equals a, we modify a, they're both still modified. But with the plus operator, it's non-destructive, they're not aliased. So if we set b equals to a, but then we change a to be a new version of the list, a plus before, a will no longer be equal to b. And that's all we have for adding elements.